Okay, I'm going to show you how to use Jackfruit. Just go to jackfruit.cococloud.co. You don't need that little thing at the end, and it will show you this screen. The idea behind Jackfruit is to have a way to edit question sets within a Coconut application. So we've got to select a Coconut application. We're going to start with Shoki Shoki. That's kind of one we're in development on. And then you need to have the database password to log in. If you don't have it, then you're going to have to ask me. Oops, I think I put an extra L in there. And we've logged in. Here we've got a list of question sets for this Coconut application. And the idea is, if you want to create a new question set, you can go ahead and give it a name, and it'll add one to the list. Or if you want to edit an existing question set, you can just click on it, and it will give you all that you need in order to edit these question sets. So, a little bit about this page, how this thing works. Essentially, you are looking for things to edit, things to change, questions to add, questions to remove. That's what you do right here. So at the top, this first section, we've got the question set level configuration. So what does that mean? This means when you open that page on the tablet or in the browser or whatever that has a list of all the questions that your user is answering, this is code that would be used to kind of configure that whole view or that whole experience of dealing with all the different questions. So for instance, if you wanted to make the screen flash red when they validated complete, when they marked that question set as complete, you could do that here by taking advantage of this onValidated complete configuration. So for instance, here's the code. We could then do something like alert, you are complete, or you have completed the question set. Okay, we save that, and that's just a little bit of code that's going to run when they complete the question set. So that's an example for question set level configuration. You can see that there's a description next to each one of these kind of configuration options if you want to learn more on how to do this. Then we've got our list of questions. Right? So these are the different questions that get shown in this question set. So we're dealing with the lab test question set. So you can imagine these are the questions you would be needing to capture for a lab test. So we have test date, a patient ID, test type, sample ID, and then what that result is. And for each one of these, there is going to be, for each one of these questions, there is another set of properties that you can configure, things you can do with that question. So for instance, is this question required? Yes, it is. It's true. You could change that. What's the label? It's patient ID. You could change that by clicking on this and editing it. What kind of question is it? It is a text question. So, so those are sort of different properties you can configure. There's also other properties that you might want to take advantage of. An action to take when it's changed or when all of the questions are loaded. So if you want to do something where you're looking up the patient's previous record, you could use some of these configuration options if you wanted to do that. Or if you want to add some skip logic, you could go ahead and do that in here. Probably the most useful one is validation. So for this patient ID, what if we want to make sure that a patient ID always has always starts with a P? So I clicked Add Patient ID, and that's now moved it to this top section up here. And this black area is the validation code. Right now it doesn't have anything because we've just created it. It says executable CoffeeScript code goes here. I can go ahead and click on that. And if I want to add some validation, I can then put in a message and say something like patient IDs must start with the letter P. And we want to show that message unless the current value starts with P. That's how you add validation to a question. So now if we click patient ID, we can see that there's this code, and it's sort of syntax highlighted. That's colored so that you can kind of see what part is the message and which part is the the logic that it's being used to execute with. You could also remove questions, or if you wanted, you can see what this code looks like, kind of the raw, it's called JSON, JavaScript code. You can edit it directly by clicking there and dealing with it. But hopefully everything you need is captured up here in these different interfaces that have descriptions about what these things do. Okay, we could also add a new question by clicking here and saying, this is a silly one, but what if we want to capture the patient's hair color? And what type would we want it to be? We could make it a text, and that has created a new question called hair color, and it's of type text, and there's no extra configuration options in here. But if we wanted to, we could decide that, okay, this doesn't really need to be asked, it doesn't need to be answered, so we can make the required value instead of being, I think this should be true and false. I think that could look better, but we've made it so that it's required 1, so it is required. So actually, let's make it 0, not required. So that's how you would add a required property for each question. So there's a lot of content in here in terms of describing what these different things do, and I encourage you to read the descriptions, and if they don't make sense, let me know and I will update them, because we want to make this thing as useful as possible. But for now, I hope you find it useful and helps you, and that you are able to do the sorts of things that you need to do. Thanks a lot.